and I'm going to be one of the, excuse me, this meeting will be recorded so that we can share the presentation for anyone who doesn't happen to be here today. So just wanted to make sure that all of you would be aware of that for this particular program. Okay, so if you didn't get to hear my little introduction as you were coming in, firstly, my name is Jesse, and I'm one of the librarians on the programming team for the Dallas Public Library. And today, we're going to be continuing the Social Media for Seniors series, and we're going to be focusing on Pinterest, which is a very interesting and surprisingly useful social media platform that has become very widely used over the last decade. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes. We had a lot of people registered, so I don't want to be starting right at the beginning. So that way we give some people a little bit more time to trickle in, but I'm also going to be making sure that everybody gets the opportunity to see the demonstration. For any of you who had previously been for our last installment on the Social Media for Seniors, or SMS for short, the Instagram event, it went very well. We'll be recording another version of it sometime soon in case anyone had missed it. And there's going to be a small presentation that's going to be going on here as I just give a broad overview of what the platform and the application is. And then we'll spend the most amount of time in this meeting talking about the basics of how to actually use the platform. So if this is one of your first times on a Zoom meeting quite like this, we're going to request that you keep your account and microphone on mute at the moment, so that I can make my way through the allotted material that we'll be going through. But there is going to be more than one question and answer session throughout the hour that we're going to be spending together. So I'll be doing my best to make sure that I leave no questions unanswered by any fault of that. Could have said that better, couldn't I? All right, so all things considered, we're going to go ahead and just wait about a minute or two more before we get everything going with the little slideshow I have. It's not as long as I had for the Instagram one. This one's just going to cover the broad basics and make sure that everyone is familiar with that particular aspect for it. But we're going to spend most amount of time on my iPad right here, and I'll be showing all of you what the application is like that way. But as we are waiting, one thing I can go ahead and just quickly share for everyone is that Pinterest is, of course, a social media platform that revolves around compiling images. Their own website calls it a visual discovery engine, which is an interesting turn of phrase. I got to give them credit for creative writing and nothing else. See, we've got a few more right here. So, and I want to go ahead and just say thank you in advance to my friend Brandon, who is going to be running the Zoom portion of this. So he will be helping me to keep an eye on the chat. So if there's any questions that are listed there, both he and I will be watching that so that we can respond to any and all questions that you may have in the course of the event as we move forward. Okay, so with that being the case, Pinterest is an application and website that you can access on both types of technology, I should say. It's available for both the Google Play Store and the Apple Store, and there, of course, is no charge for it up front, but as we'll be talking about here in just a minute, there is a price that you have to pay in a different sort of method. All right, so we've got ourselves about, it's at the 5-minute mark, so I'm going to go ahead and remove myself from the screen and share my own screen. So we're just going to make sure that everyone can see it. Starting broadcast in 3 seconds. Okay, so it looks like I can see it right there. So we're going to switch out of Zoom right here and begin my little presentation right here. So To start with, I want to go ahead and cover some of the broad things to remember about the internet in general, and not just uh, the application Pinterest itself. One of the things you should always keep in mind whenever you're interacting on the internet is always avoid being too personal in a public forum, because if you post any sort of information that is too close to you, it can be used against you. So your things like your personal identifier information like address, birth date, social security number, email, phone number, never ever make those public, because is extremely sensitive, and all kinds of bad things can happen for that. The next thing you want to keep in mind is the internet is forever. Even if you end up deleting something like a photo, a comment, or an account, go ahead and assume that there will be some record of it, and always be mindful of what you post and collect. The next point is, of course, the internet is dark and full of liars. As we have learned over the course of the internet's lifespan, there's a myriad of opportunities for scams, hoaxes, fake accounts that people try to masquerade as other people. That's also known as catfishing, and misinformation, it's disinformation. There's all different types of threats to you and your online security. But if you know what to look for, you can spot them and avoid them. Another thing to keep in mind, of course, is that you cannot control what other people post. The only things that you can truly control on the internet is what you bring to it, who sees your content, and what you choose to consume. So with that being the case, if there's like a Pinterest account or a pin that you come across that you don't necessarily want to see, you can choose not to have that in your feed. And I'll be explaining that a little bit more in detail. And a few minutes ago, I had mentioned that even though social media platforms like Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, those are free insofar as they do not ask for money in order to use the platform, but there is a price to be paid. The first rule of economics is there's no such thing as a free lunch. So they can track your activity in order to show you ads and products that may appeal to you. And that's one of the things that Pinterest is especially good at and revolves around. So now that we've gotten those particular things out of the way, what exactly is Pinterest? It's a social media platform like a lot of others, but it came about because it was focusing around collecting images and links to different websites. It's been in existence for over a decade. I believe it was created in 2009. And over the course of that a decade that it has existed, it's become one of the most popular and utilized websites in the world. The most recent updated information I had about their users is that they had about 478 million monthly active users, which is pretty big. Not quite as large as, say, Instagram or Facebook or anything else like that, but that's nothing to sneeze at. And their current market value for the website itself is approximately $50 billion, which is huge. And as we go through the demonstration here before too long, we'll get a better sense of how it actually becomes that valuable. Now, the application itself, as I had mentioned, is available to access as both a website that you can see on your desktop browser, as well as a downloadable application from the Google Store and the Apple Store. And both of them function perfectly fine. Although in my particular experience, I find that I enjoy using it the most on either a browser or my iPad, because it fits better. Like, I do have the application on my phone, but it's a little bit smaller and more condensed. Whereas both the iPad and the online version, they don't feel quite so cramped. And to that point, I should also mention that there are browser extensions available, which is a small little program that you can add to your browser itself in order to make it do something else. So, for instance, if you have Safari, if you're a Mac user, you can add a extension to the Safari browser that will be a Pinterest button where it will allow you to create a pin to use for your Pinterest account. Now, with that being the case, we'll be getting into the terminology here in just a moment, but you may be asking yourself, what exactly is Pinterest used for? Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, that it's for collecting images, but over the course of the past 10 years, it's come to have a very wide variety of uses, expansive even. And it's one of the many reasons it's become so popular and profitable is because many different brands and outlets use Pinterest itself for marketing and advertising directly for their products to you, the consumer. And while it does have a lot of similarity and overlap to Instagram, it's not as popular for direct socialization. Like you can add friends and message them directly, and I will be showing you how to do some of that. But it's used more for personal browsing and collecting more than anything else. But some other uses that are prominently known for collecting various recipes and sharing images for inspiration or idea sharing. I've read accounts of teachers actually sharing lesson plans between their Pinterest accounts. And I've mentioned earlier, like brands and outlets also do have a lot of potential for shopping here, as well as linking to things for design, do-it-yourself instructions, and many other different types of varieties. All right, so with that being the case, what you may be asking what's required in order to sign up for an account. And much like many of the other social media platforms, signing up for the account is one of the easiest parts. You do need to have an email address, but if you don't want to do that, you can link your Pinterest account to a broader account, like say Google, Facebook, or Apple. On the right-hand side of the screen, I have a screenshot of when I was actually signing up this demo account that I made for the purposes of this presentation. And you can do this either on the mobile website or on the application, like I did on my iPad. And you can be logged in on both devices at the same time. And if you choose to create your own unique account, which would be what you do with your email, you'll of course need to make your own password, much like any other platforms. And immediately after you sign up, you'll be offered a bunch of different collections of content and topics, and you'll choose what most interests you. And this will help determine what you will see on the site. And with that being the case, I'm going to keep the vocabulary for Pinterest to a minimum this time. So when it comes to the Pinterest specific vocabulary, the two things that you really most need to know is what a pin is and what a board is. A pin is an individual image that acts like a bookmark that you save, and it can come from basically anywhere on the internet. And meanwhile, a board is think of it as kind of like a cork board where you can take a like an individual pin and put up like things like the calendars and different notes in your room. But when it comes to Pinterest here, a board is really more of a curated collection of different images under one heading where you keep the individual pins. And you'll see a few examples of that here in the next few slides. And I do have some other broader terms that are just found from other platforms. So the algorithm, which I may be referring to throughout the presentation, is the complex mathematical formula and program that helps Pinterest know what you're going to be more likely to engage with. So it processes the things that you pin, you save, and organize as well, and your activity, and it will show more content that you will enjoy so that you can be more and more engaged with it over time. And the feed refers to the images that the platform serves you in the hopes that you will like them. It's much the same as when you're on Facebook or Instagram, where you log in and there's a set of content that's waiting for you, whether it's from posts from your friends or photos that they've uploaded, and it's usually the most recent things, and that's the platform and the algorithm making things available for you so that you can be further engaged. So next we actually have some of the earlier examples I have of boards that I have made on Pinterest for this demo account, which you'll get a better view at here in just a moment. So the one on the left right here, they have very similar content, because the very first thing that I made for this Pinterest account was a board about desserts that I would be interested in making, because I want to get better at cooking, and well, who doesn't like desserts? I'm on a pretty strict eating plan right now, so that was that's something that I don't get to have a lot of these days. So I just thought I'm going to start collecting all of these so that on things like on cheat days, I now have some options for things that I can try and cook for myself. On the left-hand image, that is the feed that's just for my account in general. And since at that particular time, I only had one board, it was really doubling down on giving me more desserts that I would be interested in making. On the right-hand side, you can see the actual board that I had been making and content that Pinterest is trying to gear towards that, saying like, oh, we know you're making the desserts board, so here's a few other options that you may want to consider putting onto it. And as you can see in both feeds right here, whether it's my normal one for the account or the one specifically for the desserts, there's already ads available in there. On the left-hand side, it's one which what I believe is for eyelashes, but which I imagine, and that's just with some of the mathematical things. They say, oh, people who save a lot of desserts are also interested in eyelash care or makeup or things like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that cut and dry. And meanwhile, on the right-hand side, where it's more about the desserts, there's two different ads you can see right there. One of them is for Jimmy Dean, the sausage company, and another one is from the Heinz company, and for a recipe called the Heinz cake, which I'm a little dubious about that one. I'm gonna have to do, like, I was a little unsure about adding that one. So the next image I have right here is of a different particular set of pins that I might be interested in adding into my particular boards here for a different one, which you'll see here in a minute, that I labeled library inspiration. What a surprise, the librarian is interested in pictures of other libraries, I know. So with that being the case, these are some options that Pinterest is thinking, hey, maybe you would be interested in these pictures, which they were. And as you can see in each one of these little pictures right here, there's that little plus icon down in the corner, and that would give me the ability to add those pictures to the board for library inspiration. That said, you can see there's a great big Amazon ad right there with photos of furniture that matches kind of the things that I had already been working with. So the algorithm is very powerful in that regard, because it's immediately trying to help sell me things based on only a few things that I had curated. So that's going to be the limit of the actual slideshow I had here. And we're going to spend most of the remaining time here on the application Pinterest itself, which I already have available, and I'm opening up here. So this is my home feed. But before I get too into the weeds in showing how to work with Pinterest and such, I am going to go ahead and take a few minutes here to just pause and see if there's any questions or clarifications that anyone here in the event would like me to clarify or answer. So I'll take a second right here. So if you have any questions, feel free to type something in chat. Myself and Brandon are looking, but if that's not convenient for you and you'd prefer to just unmute yourself to ask the question, that's perfectly fine too. All right. Irma Thompson is asking, can you limit views to just a few people, no one else? To a certain extent, yes, Irma. Well, you can control what boards are available for people to see, and you have the ability to send individual pins to people privately and not make them public. And you can also have people collaborate on building different boards with you. So those are the ways that that would go about. And in the course of my little demo right here, I'll hopefully be able to show you how to do all of those three examples. Thank you for your question. Deborah asks, so a pin is like a Facebook post and a board is like a Facebook group? Well, you're close. That first one, a pin is like a Facebook post, that's a very good description for it, yes. But a Facebook group is not the best way to describe it, but there is a little bit. It's closer to being like, say on Facebook, you upload a photo and you have them all arranged in a different particular photo album, like say Maui trip or something like that. So that's what a board would be like in that one. But there is a social component to it, which is why that's not a bad example you just gave. Because for instance, if I wanted to, some of these boards, I could have a friend or some other person help me work on that particular one. So there is a social component to it. Thank you for asking that question. Okay, so we've got those two. Does anyone else have any questions or things that I could help clarify before we start working with the actual Pinterest here? Okay, Deborah asks, is there anything else but pins/photos? I'm not necessarily sure what you mean by that, Deborah. Are you meaning like videos or things like that? Oh, as in articles? Yes, that actually is going to be a part of it. And I'm glad that you asked me that question, I should say, because that is definitely going to be something that you can do in the course of working with Pinterest. So I'll be showing you guys about that here very shortly. You have a lot of good questions, Deborah. Thank you very much for asking all of those. Okay, so does anyone else have any questions or clarifications that I need to make? Okay. Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay, so with that being the case, we're going to go ahead and get into what the boards are like and what pins are like. So as you can see here on this particular screen, I currently am, all right, there's a different heading right here. Up at the very front, there's a For You tab, and this is a feed that is more of a general set of recommendations that Pinterest has provided. And as you may be able to see right here, there's the green, you're viewing Jesse's screen at the top of the Zoom, but you should still be able to see the names of the various boards I've created. Today is not one of them. That is just a set of recommendations directly from Pinterest, where it's kind of like Twitter's trending page, rather, where they're just saying, this is what's popular today, so maybe it's of interest to you. It's not interesting to me at this particular moment, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. Oh, all right, so here's one particular thing that I find kind of interesting. So you can scroll upwards and downwards in order to see what Pinterest has recommended to you. And as you can already see, there's a lot of ads already from Milton Sleep Company, Core, Amazon again. But the reason I decided to stay here on this particular page to start with is I like this little hot dog pin that they have provided here of the various different types of them. And maybe it's because I'm particularly hungry. So I'm going to just tap this one right here. And this is the pin expanded. So I'm going to go ahead and save this pin. I've clicked save up in the right-hand corner. And my apologies for not having a cursor available. That's the downside of using an iPad, but I'll do my best to be descriptive with where the functions and buttons are for anything you need to do. So as you can see here, I have several boards that I can save this in. And it's kind of like me putting a sheet of paper into a different set of files. So I'm going to go ahead and just have this in the generic recipes tab. So, and I'm getting the notification there that it was successful, that it is now saved to the recipes tab. So board, I should say, the recipes board. So these are some, so if you see down here at the bottom, here on the iPad view, there's this small little taskbar with 4 different categories, and they're labeled home, search, notifications, and saved. We're going to start on the far right side of that one with the saved icon. So this is the Pinterest account that I created for the purposes of explaining how Pinterest actually works for everybody. So I've only had this for like about a week and change, and we'll go ahead and do that. I don't have a profile picture here, and that's just my generic screen name. And the category immediately below that is for the boards right there. All right, Deborah asks, did you create your board titles, or are these already existing board titles that you choose from? And that's a good question, Deborah. I actually did create all of these because I wanted them to be made myself. But there are boards that exist out there that you can follow, that other people make. So we're going to go ahead and start with that desserts one because that's the oldest one I have. So I apologize in advance if you start to get hungry looking at these particular things. I certainly am. So each one of these pins right here refers to a different location on the internet. Yes, it's a great collection of pictures, and each one of these contains a bunch of information that Pinterest uses to gauge things that I'm going to be particularly interested in. A good example is you can see over here on the left-hand side of the screen that that picture on the leftmost column in the middle is labeled as Bailey's Cookies and Cream Parfaits. That sounds delicious, so I would absolutely save that here. And when I was building the other boards for the presentation, I was getting alcohol ads. So the Bailey's right there was enough for the Pinterest algorithm to say, hey, maybe he'll be interested in things like Kahlua or Johnny Walker. So that's an example of how the ads will work in real time. But if we also click this one right here, we can see the person who actually made this particular pin. In this case, it's a woman named Chrissy. So there's several options right here now that we're zooming in on the pin. There's, I just clicked the 3 buttons right up here to the left, where you can search for visually similar things, or you can mark the pin as you've tried this. You can try to edit the pin or download the image to the device you're currently using, or copy the link, or report the pin for it being against the terms and conditions, or like that's not something you really need to worry about too much unless you see something that is just absolutely horrible. Now this button right there, which looks like a line with an arrow above it, is about sending. So here on my iPad, you can see the options I have for sending this pin to other people. I could use Messenger messages. These are the apps that are, of course, Apple exclusive, or I could just copy the link. Now, these particular accounts that are immediately below the search bar are accounts on Pinterest that I already follow. It's not much of a surprise that I'm following the Dallas Public Library because why wouldn't I follow my workplace? NASA, because I'm interested in astronomy and space travel. Delish, because I get some excellent food pins. And the Daily Stoic, because that's one of the forms of philosophy that I'm most interested in. So that's how that works with sending there. But if we click visit here, it will actually bring up the recipe on how to make the Bailey's Cookies and Cream Parfaits. So Deborah, a moment ago, you had actually asked about the articles. So that pin is really just a doorway that will take you to things like this recipe here. I'm going to go ahead and click the X up here to make it go away, but that's just an example of how these things are more than just the pictures themselves. So we're going to go ahead and go back to my overall profile right here. And I had mentioned earlier in my slideshow, the library inspiration board, and that's what I've got here. So these are a bunch of lovely looking photos of some old school libraries that I've thought were gorgeous for reasons, well, it fits my style overall. I've always liked like the Wayne Manor aesthetic. Like I grew up on the old Batman, so I've always liked the libraries that they showed having in those old school buildings. So a lot of lovely pictures right here. So if we click just one of them, I'll do this one right here. So, and we can see the person who had created this pin listed as Sandra Powell, who has 133,000 followers. I should also mention, you can see with her profile picture there, just a small red check mark. And when we had done the Instagram presentation 2 weeks ago, check marks on Instagram that are blue are verified profiles. And it's the same concept over here on Pinterest. It's just, it's a different color. So we know for sure that that is the real person, Sandra Powell. Like Pinterest has contacted her and made sure that it's the right one and for that. And there's a brief little description of the image. She's saying that her library is not done, and we can expand that. So this is a reference to her blog, and the pin just brings her there. So that's just another way to access it. Okay, so Deborah is asking there, what is the plus sign toward the bottom of the screen? And I'm glad that you asked that, Deborah. That allows you to create your own pins and as well as organize the board itself. You can organize boards into like subsections. That may sound like you're organizing in something that is already organized, but there can be a good reason for it. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to a different board as an example. So with the recipes tab right here, again, I'm sorry if this makes you hungry, but I'm certainly hungry myself at this point looking at them. So I have a lot of the different recipes for great looking food that I certainly would like to eat sometime soon, if it weren't for this pesky diet that I'm on. So what I could use the plus icon right here for further organization, so say section, and I'm going to have a pasta section. So I'm going to tap the space there with the field and type in pasta, and I click next. After that, I'm going to choose the ones that I want for this section of the board. So I'll choose that one that's labeled mac and cheese, the garlic parmesan mac and cheese, and that other one there. I don't want to have the Tex-Mex meatballs there because that seems like its own sort of thing. So I've clicked done. So now there is a new section of the board. So as we can see right there, there's going to be a board within a board now. And that one is just specifically those pasta pictures that we had already done. Oh, I'd forgotten the beef and shells, but that's fine. All right, so with that being the case, that's an example of how you can use that one. Now, you may be asking, but what if I want to delete a pin, Jesse? And there's absolutely a mechanic for you to do that. So I have right here a set of pins that are quotes from Stoic philosophers. And they, long story made short, there are a bunch of philosophers that were popular during the Roman Empire. In fact, one of the major ones was a Roman emperor. That would be Marcus Aurelius. And I very much like the philosophy, and I like to have some of those quotes readily available to just remind me to be humble. And I curate this pretty seriously. So I've mentioned Mr. Marcus Aurelius. As you can see, there's several of his quotes right here. However, this gentleman right over here on the right, Epicurus, is not a Stoic. He was actually an Epicurean. He was the founder of the Epicurean philosophy. That's where the word Epicurean for food comes from. So I'm going to go ahead and remove him from this particular one. Oh, that's not the right one. My mistake on that one. There should be, All right, so mark panels tried. We do not want that one. I had this earlier. All right, so here we go. That's it. So since I am using the iPad, what I want to do is hold my finger down over the image, and then I get these different articles right here. There's the thumbtack, which will just label it as pin. The arrows will say where it's going to be in this board, and it helps organize. There's the send button again, but I'm looking for the pencil button right here because I want to delete this pin from the board. It'll ask me if I'm sure I want to do that, which I am. I click the big red button, and it is now gone from my Stoic quotes board because it was not a Stoic quote. So that's how that went about. Okay, I recognize that's a lot of examples all at once, so I'll take a pause right here. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. When I resume, I'm actually going to be showing more about what it's like searching on Pinterest as well as notifications. But while everyone is okay, Sharon Goldstein is asking, is there a place to find the boards you have created? Yes, and that's where we actually have been remaining for this portion of the presentation. This is on my particular profile itself. So these are all of my boards right here. Irma Thompson is asking, do all the pins have to come from something online? I would like to send personal photos to family only. Is that possible? That should be, and I think I know how I would go about doing that. I'll get to that one here before too long, because in addition to curating the pins, I also wanted to show all of you how to create one. In fact, over here on the right-hand side of the search bar, there is a plus sign there, and if you click it, it'll pop up the options right here where you can create a pin or a board. And we're going to create a new board here in a few minutes, but for now I'm going to click pin. And these are some photos that I have already given Pinterest the ability to actually look at. So these are of just downtown buildings in downtown Dallas, I should say, as well as a book I would like to be reading, and the dog of a friend of mine. So we're going to go ahead and just take this picture of the Magnolia building, and we're going to make a pin out of that. So I'll click next here. So we'll call it the Magnolia building. And the description is the historic Magnolia building in downtown Dallas. Didn't expect my keyboard to take up so much of the screen there. My apologies. And I have seen one particular question here in the chat asking if it's saying it's a bit hard to follow because there's no moving cursor. Yes, I recognize that, and I am sorry that I wasn't able to make that happen for this particular version of the presentation. All right, and then it actually adds a destination website, but I don't necessarily want that here. All right, and I'm going to just go ahead and save that to my profile. So that, okay. Well, it looks like it wouldn't let me do that without a identification for which board it wanted to go to. So I'll try that again. All right, so this is where you would actually decide who gets to see content that you would make. If I wanted to make this board secret, I would hit this little button down here that is labeled as visibility. So I would click that, and it's black right now. So that would be making sure that nobody else could see this board if I wanted it to be hidden. But I don't necessarily feel strongly about keeping that pin hidden, so I'm creating it. All right, so now there's the Dallas Buildings board, and there is this pin that I personally have created. So that should answer the question about how you can keep personal photos for your family. What you would want to do is create a board with the pins that you would like to make, and you can even add friends and family as collaborators to that particular board. But you would just want to make sure that it would be labeled as secret so nobody else could see it. That's how that would go about. All right, I'll go ahead and check over here. Suzanne Elliott asks, are copyright laws applicable? Pinterest has actually gone in and out and said that they will not be making money off of your content any further. That was the most recent bit I had talked about. And yes, Deborah was responding to Irma. It's still not a good idea to post anything in Pinterest or Facebook that you want to keep private. And I do agree with that, yes. There is a mechanic for it, but like we said earlier, the internet is forever. So you don't necessarily want to open Pandora's box in that regard. All right, so we're going to go ahead and back out of this particular section of the actual app for the demo. And we're going to go focus on two areas of the app that I have not yet explored. And that would be the notifications one, because this one is going to be nice and easy to handle. Oh, and I had also forgotten, these are some pins that I had also saved, but they didn't immediately fit into some of the boards that I've already created. So I have things for like libraries, but not necessarily ones for these beautiful houses that I had seen. I can create a new board though, and I can click organization. I click each individual photo that I want to compile them together in. Click next and create new. So just houses, create. And there's a new board for those particular pins, and now they are no longer unorganized. But we're gonna go ahead and go over to the notifications tab here. I'm tapping it away on my iPad, but it doesn't seem to want to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to navigate to one of the other aspects then. Well, that's inconvenient. I don't necessarily want to be in my section of the profile any further. I'll just try and get a round from that. I see the comment there. My apologies, Deborah. Yes, I'm quite hungry alongside as well. All right. Well, while I'm actually stuck in that particular section of the app, I thought I would go ahead and just show the various profiles that I can be following at the moment. It looks like Pinterest has not verified our account yet, but this is the Dallas Public Library's Pinterest account. So this is a set of boards that we have created that other people can see, like things like what we are reading, what we'd rather be reading, and just community outreach as well as that. And there's our brief description there with some of our other contact information and some of the other people who follow us. So there's that. This is NASA's. As we can see with the red check mark, they are verified. And this is a bunch of the pins that they have created. So there's that. Now, I seem to have made more people. All right, so down to Mary is asking where the notifications are. Down on the bottom of the screen in the middle, there's that taskbar, which is being rude to me. It's not wanting to do what I want it to do. And there we go, it finally worked. So this little button right here that is now illuminated, which looks like a speech bubble with a few dots in there, like an ellipses in grammar. The notifications refers to exactly like Facebook, where it's the platform letting you know something has happened. So, excuse me. So the most recent notification that they gave me was like, these are some things that are popular right now. This perfect pickled beets pin, or canning tomatoes, or canning okra. And there's a few other particular boards they think I might be interested in with men's clothing, pretty people, wolf tattoos for whatever reason. But then, and there's ones, and as you can see, with each particular little installment and set of these pins, there's a different time tag. So like the trending search is down here at the bottom. It was from 6 days ago. The DIY one with this very cool little pyramid right there was from 5 days ago. And the one up the very top was the most recent. Now, the other section of the messages area on Pinterest is messages. And this is where I would actually send messages to other accounts on Pinterest, but I won't be doing that in this particular presentation. So Pinterest, days ago, Pinterest had sent me this, and that is just welcoming me to the program. If I wanted to write a new message, I would only be able to do it to send a message to another account on a Pinterest that I follow. It's the same sort of rules for Facebook and Instagram, where you can only send a message to someone you're already following in the first place. Now, that's the notifications tab taken care of. So there's one more area that I wanted to focus on before I opened up back to some further questions. So this is the search tab. So when in the basic search one, I don't necessarily need to put in a term in order to make the platform offer me some new options. It's off, as we can see up top under the ideas for you. Some of these are already based off of things that I have saved in the course of my own browsing on Pinterest. There's the strawberry desserts one. There's library design. On the top row, there's philosophy quotes, which is, I can see Seneca is the thumbnail they use right there. So I might be interested in adding that to my Stoic quotes board because he was a Stoic philosopher. And of course, on the top right-hand side, there's grilled cheese recipes. But as an example for just how wide and expansive the amount of pins and boards that you could be interested in are, like for men's suits, Halloween aesthetic, things about Spider-Man or fantasy, as well as setting up things for bedrooms or anime, which is Japanese cartoons, if you're not familiar with that. And there's other more specific ones like the rapper Kanye West. I don't know why they're recommending him to me, but oh, he's under the men's fashions. He has a clothing line. That makes sense. Okay, so I seem to be getting a little bit tight on time, so I'm going to quickly show. These are some things that I have searched for previously within Pinterest itself. So like I've searched for beautiful words, modern office, modern study, Cuban sandwich. That was for the recipes tab. Date ideas. I think I'm going to go ahead and just show that one. I thought this was absolutely charming when I searched for it. So young couples can absolutely do this if they've run out of ideas for things like what they can do for fun when they go see each other. There's a lot of different pins that will give you things that you might not have necessarily known you wanted to do with your significant other. Over here on the left, the Valentine's themed pin is labeled stay at home date nights. So like, and they have like 30 different options there. And all of these other pins are very similar. Oh, I particularly like this one over here on the left-hand side, the everything organized and other tips. They have a blow-up kiddie pool and they filled it in not with water, but with pillows and blankets. So like, that's what they're going to be doing. And I thought that was nice. Okay, now here's actually an example of what we can actually, Deborah, I do see your question right there. Is there a way to dismiss pins that Pinterest thinks you might be interested in? Yes, and there is a way to do that with ads as well. So we have this ad recommendation right here for checking your zodiac signs compatibility. I have no interest in that, so I'm going to hit that little button right there, and I'm going to click hide, and I'm not going to see that any further. So that's how that will go about. Now, I had mentioned that I wanted to create a different board with you, and we already have when I showed you how to create a pin with the Magnolia Hotel building. but there's a different version that I already had in mind, as well as some examples of it. I'm going to create a board today called Beautiful Words for some words that may not necessarily be very widely used, but are still gorgeous and should probably be used. But so I like this one over here on the right-hand side called redamancy, and they define it as the act of loving the one who loves you, a love returned in full. So when this is another way how you can create a new board. You click save and create a new board, and I'm going to label this Beautiful Words. And you can add a collaborator there. So if you have a friend that also uses Pinterest and you'd like them to help you collect these pictures of beautiful words and their definitions, that's how that would go about. So now that I've actually created that new one, I'm going to go ahead and add a few of these other options here for it. So I like this one, saudade. So I'm going to save that one to Beautiful Words. I click the big red save button on the right-hand side. But if I want to check its provenance, I'm going to go ahead and click the Visit tab right there. And this will bring up a different article where that image originally came from. This shows where the pin was made. And this comes from the website BuzzFeed, and it seems to be an article for words for emotions and feelings that people have felt but never been able to put into words before. Like, how do I say this one? Eleutheromania. Ooh, I like that. An intense and irresistible desire for freedom. And you can see, even though I'm not technically on the Pinterest app at this moment, well, I'm using the web browser to see where this article came from. There is the big red Pinterest button right there. So I'm going to click save for that one so that I can save it to this Beautiful Words tab. So that's an example of using Pinterest even when you're not on the actual app. So it'll work that way. Let's see what else we can add to this one. Oh, Des Vu, the awareness that this will become a memory. I like that one. So I'm going to click that one, and it goes onto the Beautiful Words tab itself. Now, that's how that will go about. And if you were present in the Instagram post, you may recall that I am a super fan for the Western Lonesome Dove. So there's pins that people have made from that particular one. So these are some pins that people have made from that particular mini series. And thankfully, I'm seeing a lot of the good ones where I am not interested in the sequels. I want the original one, Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones. So we've got all of those that I could make a Lonesome Dove board out of. But while I'm actually here in the search tab, excuse me, sorry, I had to sneeze there. You can see beneath the search bar, there's 3 subcategories of what I am searching for. So the Explore one is a little bit of a broader term where it's just like anything that is labeled as Lonesome Dove. But if I want to actually find something to buy that is related to Lonesome Dove, I can go for the Shop one. What I would actually recommend here is once you actually see something that is particularly interesting, like say, we'll do this one with Gus's quote, "I'm the one man you don't boss." You click visit here, and this will redirect you to where this item is available for sale. In this case, that would be eBay. And that can be very useful because, like I'd actually mentioned earlier, you can search for furniture for like modern office. So these are some of the ones that have filled up my library design. So you could actually look for things that you're wanting to try and find for a living space that you're working with. And in the shop category, it will actually give you things that are kind of close to that one. And it will even list the price for the various things that they're advertising there. So, and as you can see, there's an Amazon ad over here on the left-hand side. But each one of these particular pins here will actually take you to somewhere that they're actually trying to sell you something. Whereas meanwhile, all these particular profiles for Modern Office would be for other profiles and places where you would be interested in learning more about doing that. So you can see things like Pottery Barn and Bed Bath & Beyond, Architectural Digest, and things like that. So that's a lot of ground covered right here. So I've got about 5 minutes left in the presentation. I do apologize if that it covered some areas that were a little bit more on the specific side. Let's go ahead and open up the chat and see right here. All right, Deborah has another great question. What's the difference between a Pinterest search and a Google search? Well, aside from the location, the Pinterest thing is only going to look for things that are on the Pinterest website itself. So, and that is also going to, it's not going to be as wide reaching as Google, because Google covers a huge amount of the internet, not everything, but a very large amount. And Pinterest refers to things that people have already made pins of. Okay, so we've got that particular question answered. So I have about 4 minutes left here in this particular event. So I'll be happy to answer any and all questions that we have right here, and clarify anything in case I didn't do a very good job explaining it the first time, which, knowing me, and I tend to take after my father and be a bit of a motor mouth, is a very real possibility. Okay, Irma Thompson says, great presentation. Thank you very much, Irma. I appreciate it. Okay, Deborah says, very informative, but I'm still not sure if it's for me, as I'm already on Facebook, and now it's time for some dinner. And that's totally valid. Much like safe foods that people aren't particularly interested in for themselves, not every social media platform is for everybody. And if this has just taught you that this is not necessarily something you want to devote your time to, that's useful in and of itself. So I'll count that as a success. Now, Terry is asking, how do people sell things on Pinterest? That is not a feature that I feel competent answering, because I am sure that there is a ability for people to try and sell their things on Pinterest, but I don't think that my answer is going to be very satisfactory. I can imagine that someone could make a pin for the eBay listing, kind of like the one we saw a minute ago with the Modern Office. That's what I would try to make that happen. But if you're actually searching for that sort of stuff here, that it could work. But I think you'd probably be better served using the shop category in whatever search you're looking for. So like in my Lonesome Dove one. Oh, Suzanne has a comment right here. Julia says, very great information. Thank you for saying so, Julia. And Suzanne says, I've also done an excellent job. Wonderful overview. I'm a born teacher. Thank you very much for saying so, Suzanne. I'm glad that I've done well by you and by several of the other participants here. I feel like I can do better always, but I'm just very glad to have been of assistance to all of you. And of course, if there's any of you have any questions, is what I meant to be saying, I will always be happy to answer them in any capacity. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen here. So we still have another minute. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to do so. And it looks like we are no longer live broadcasting to Zoom. Okay, am I back? I think so. Mary, yes, if we have recorded the actual presentation. So if you would like to message me directly, and we can send you the file so that you can watch this again, yes. And we're considering putting it up on YouTube, but I'm not necessarily sure if I want this version to be made available. I might want to try again. Suzanne, I can tell you I am from Dallas-Fort Worth, yes. And I graduated about, how long ago was that? Oh goodness, I'm old. It was like maybe 13 years ago. So, but I came from the Fort Worth side of the Metroplex, but I came over here eventually. Okay, so in case there's anyone else here in the chat. In addition to running things like the social media for seniors series that I've done here and Instagram, another program that we have available for the Dallas Public Library is the Senior Coffee Club. And that is a nice little social hour where we originally came up with it because of the pandemic restrictions, so that some of our citizens can actually get to have the chance to socialize and meet new people when the library's doors were closed. And it's still going on. Brandon is being helpful right now, sharing the link for it here for Library Market if you'd like to register and join us for our next iteration for it. And it takes place on Zoom every Tuesday at 9 a.m. And I'm usually the host for it, but a coworker of mine will be hosting very soon when I actually have to take a vacation. So in case that's one thing we're making available right here. Okay, I can't say that I'm familiar with the presentation there, the premonition rather, Suzanne, but I'll see if I can make that happen. All right, and I think I had seen one other person message me saying they wanted to see this presentation again. So let's see about if I can find them before we actually close this, because I don't want to lose that message. I think I'd seen it. Yes, Deborah. Okay, there we go. It was on this particular screen. Okay, I've got that one, Deborah. So I've got the link to the email address you've requested. So I will make sure that we get a version of this available to you. All right, I think we've expended all of the time we have available here. I see another thanks from Clint Goodwill. Thank you for attending, Clint, and very much for the presentation. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and I've got a very lovely audience right here. You've all been very complimentary, and I thank you for it. And I'd like to encourage all of you to check the Library Market website to see all of the other things that the Dallas Public Library is making available for all of you, even in this phase of the later pandemic. So I hope to see you all again in person at some point in the future. And we will be having more events for social media for seniors in the near future. We're thinking about having the next one be about Goodreads, which is the social media platform that Amazon uses where people provide book reviews. So keep your eyes peeled for Library Market, and we'll be letting you know when it comes available very soon. But until then, I'd like to wish you all a lovely Wednesday afternoon, and we'll be seeing you again soon. Have a good evening.